Hi, I'm Mark Schoenen. I'm here to talk to you today about rewarding for success and motivation at Google. We were founded in 1998 in a garage in Palo Alto by Larry and Sergey. A lot has changed since then, though. In 2004, we IPO'd, and at the time we had 3,000 employees. We were primarily a search and search ads-based company. But even since then, we've changed a lot. Last year, we were so focused on what is the next big thing that we reorganized to Alphabet. We wanted to take more strategic bets in new directions, and so we fundamentally changed how we were organized so that we could do so. Today, Alphabet is headquartered in Silicon Valley. We're no longer in a Palo Alto garage. We have 61,000 employees globally. We have more than 100 offices in over 50 different countries. We opened our first international office in Tokyo in 2001, and we've been in Dubai for nearly a decade. I'm here today to talk to you about the 4 key levers that we use at Google for success and motivation: attracting the right talent to your organization, building for growth and scale, motivation for your top performers, and finally, how to do this under the auspices of governance. What do you know about Google culture? There's a lot about us in the press. We have fantastic workplaces. We have a great benefits strategy, and we're always evolving our benefits to adapt to the growing, to the aging, to the multiplying Googler population that we have. One of the things I'm most excited about, in 2009 in the US, we found we had a problem. A lot of our women Googlers were not returning to Google after they had a baby. And those that did, they were twice as likely to leave within 2 years. Well, we didn't like this, and we wanted to fix it. So we were using our analytics, we were using our research, and we said, okay, how can we solve this? We increased our maternity leave policy in the US by 50%, and a magical thing happened. Very quickly, we saw that the attrition rate of our new mothers went way down. It was cut in half right away. And we use instances like this on how we think about our people data so we can do what's best for our Googlers, so we can do what's best for Google. We have amazing food at Google. We get 3 hot meals a day, all for free, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We have micro kitchens on every floor of every Google office where you can get tea, you can get a snack, anything you want almost. The fundamental first part of a people strategy, though, is hiring is absolutely, time and again, the most important thing that you can do. And we find that if you attract the right talent, what you're going to do is you're going to build a strong, committed company culture that will help you as HR leaders focus on other HR challenges. Collaboration is at the core of what we do at Google. We generally have small teams. We have a consensus-driven culture. We work very close side by side with one another. We often meet in person. For those of us in remote offices, we work over video conference, and we're very much collaborating in the small environment, trying to get things done. On the sales side of the business, we have a small and medium business sales segment. And at Google, our small and medium businesses, we have millions upon millions of advertisers globally that are coming to us for advertising solutions so that they can bring customers to their business. And it's very hard for us to serve these customers at scale. We have millions and millions of advertisers globally, but we only have thousands of Googlers and the customer service professionals to actually service them. So what do? Well, we're a big data company, right? So we take the data on figuring out what works with our advertisers. So much so that we've taken all of our data and metrics and we've identified an internal science of selling. How should we pitch certain products to our advertisers? When should we be reactive versus proactive? What time of day should we talk to our customers. We've developed a very sophisticated science of selling, and so, very much like the standardization talk that we heard last night from Dr. Wire. We want to do everything that we do at scale and as efficiently as possible. But we ran into a problem doing this. We were going to universities around the world and hiring the best talent, and we were telling them, this is your job, this is what you need to do, this is when you make your phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. And we found that our Googlers weren't very motivated. They were being told what they're doing is too prescriptive, and they weren't feeling very involved. So we piloted a new approach. We piloted a self-managed team approach. We took small cohorts of 5 to 7 Googlers, and we said, listen, you are responsible for the same outcomes that you were in your old job. You will be responsible for revenue, you will be responsible for customer satisfaction, you will be responsible for response rates. But besides that, we're going to leave it to you. You're smart people, you know how to get your job done, figure it out. And what we found was something really amazing. We found 6 or 9 months later that these teams were profoundly successful at hitting their business metrics. They were getting the revenue goals, they were getting the customer satisfaction goals, but more importantly, we were able to measure through our engagement survey that our Googlers were saying things like, I feel more involved in the decisions that affect my work. I feel empowered to get things done. My voice is heard at Google. And what was very true to us was we want to focus not only on what we do, but how we do it. So we're taking learnings such as these to figure out how can we expand our self-managed team approach? How can we think about empowerment and innovation as we think about the next big thing? I want to talk a little bit about growth and scale. Alphabet's revenues last year were nearly $75 billion. It was up 14% year on year. And as we think about how do we continue to grow, currently $75 billion revenue, we have 61,000 employees, but we want to keep growing and we want to challenging the status quo. But we need to think through questions, where are our next billion users going to be? How do we get our next billion users online, and how do we delight them at Google? This presents some interesting challenges to us. As we think about a technology environment that is not only mobile first, but in many places mobile only, we need to think about how do we as Google make the mobile experience great for our next billion users? And this leads to a whole bunch of new things. Number one, our next billion users, they're not likely to be in the United States, they're not likely to be in Western Europe, they're not likely to be in Japan. What types of phones are they going to be using? It's likely that they're not going to be connected on a 4G connection. It's likely that they might not even have a 3G connection. They might be connecting on a 2G connection where connectivity is intermittent at best. And we as Google need to think about how do we build the right products for these folks? Google Maps is one of our most elegant yet simple products. Effectively, it's just an app that helps you get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, whether you're taking public transport, whether you're driving, whether you're walking, or whether you're biking. But if you're on a 2G connection and you're not always online, how does that work? We don't know the answer to this, but we're trying to solve it. We're trying to figure out how do we build out a completely functional Google Maps offline product for our next billion users. And in places like India, where people navigate not by street names, but by landmarks, how do we build the right functionality so that we can delight them with our experience? And when we think about customization on the product side, we need to think about things like Google Play. Google Play is yet another one of our products that did not exist a couple of years ago, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar revenue stream for us. But when we first built Google Play, we said, well, what is the minimum threshold to have a successful transaction between the user, between Google, and between the app developer? And we said, let's set it at $1. That seems like a reasonably low threshold. And it's worked very successfully for us. But $1 might be too high a threshold in many of our markets for our next billion users. So we're trying to rethink and solve those sorts of questions. And then finally, if we're thinking about our next billion users, right now Google has offices in more than 50 countries, but we want to expand and be in more places. And if we're building for our next billion users, the right way to do that is we need to put our Googlers working side by side with our users. We need to expand our international presence. We need to get more Googlers in places like India, in places like Sub-Saharan Africa. We really need to think how we think about our international strategy to build for growth and scale. Because what's abundantly clear is what has worked for us before is not going to work for us in the future. And as we talk about the next billion users, what's really clear to us is that at Google, it's very important that we need to customize our approach for the types of users that we're bringing online over the next 3, 5, 10 years. And it's very apparent that our product strategy, that our growth strategy, that our go-to-market strategy needs to be very different for the types of users that we're trying to attract. But just as this is true on the product side, it's equally true on the people side. And we need to think about how do we motivate and how do we bring people to Google in many different places. Google entered Dubai 8 years ago in 2008. And when we came here, we have a very simple playbook from a compensation strategy. We say things like, we have a 3-tier approach. We have a salary-based methodology. We give out bonuses. Bonuses are more highly leveraged for our salespeople, and we have share-based equity. Our share-based equity is very broad across Google, and that's our strategy, and this was our plan. But again, we had a problem. So we were finding that when we were building out our Dubai operations, that even if we would sit by a candidate side by side and say, here's the Google offer, here's all the components, here's what you're currently making, and net, we believe you're better off if you come to Google because we're offering a more lucrative remuneration package. But we were finding that there was a lot more back and forth, and it was a very time-consuming process. So this isn't rocket science. We didn't do anything revolutionary, but transport allowance, housing allowance, a customized approach on schooling allowance. These are things that we need to do as Google in Dubai to operate successfully and to compete with the local talent market. So we put initiatives like that in place, and since then we've had a much more efficient hiring process. We've been able to scale our operations and build out Dubai as a regional hub for Google. Any football fans in the crowd? Great. Mesut Ozil, Arsenal footballer. Does anyone know how much money he makes? He signed a 5-year contract with Arsenal. He makes £140,000 a week. £140,000 a week. Crazy amount of money. Question is that fair? Is that the right outcome? Mesut is making 2.2x what the average Arsenal footballer is making, but he's not spending any more time on the football pitch. At Google, we believe your best performers are worth far, far more than your average ones. And we believe that if you're not paying them commensurate to their impact, that you're almost inviting them to leave. Our strategy is threefold. First, we want to pay unfairly. Second, we want to reward accomplishment and not compensation. And third, we want to reward thoughtful failure. So at Google, we're a technology company, so we often think about this in terms of our engineers. We'll have a conversation with one of our product leads and we'll say, who's the best engineer on your team? And if he or she leaves your team, how many engineers would you trade for that top engineer? And since they're your best engineer, you know the answer is not 1. But is it 2? Would you trade your best engineer for 2 engineers? Maybe it's not 2, maybe it's 3. Maybe it's 5 or more. And we fundamentally believe that if the answer is 5 or more, you're probably underpaying that engineer. Because at Google, we believe that fair compensation is not taking everyone in a role and paying them plus or minus 20% of one another. We believe compensation is fair if you're giving them remuneration that is commensurate with the amount of impact that they have. and we believe your top performers are really providing outsized contribution to your org. In a time of LinkedIn, in a time of great technological change, your top performers are increasingly discoverable, they're increasingly mobile. It's very easy for your top performers to leave. And although we want to solve for role and impact, it's very important that we think it's very important that you're also paying them above and beyond. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about checks and balances. At Google, we're changing an awful lot. We started in a garage, we IPO'd with 3,000 employees, we now have 61,000 employees in 51 different countries. We completely reorganized to Alphabet next year. And as a 60,000 person company, we're split fairly evenly between sales and engineering, with a small number of us in HR, in legal and finance, and other administrative functions. But as we consistently change our people strategy, as we change our product strategy, we need to think about how do you have a governance structure that underlies all of this? How do you make sure that the right things are being done and that you're not wasting money in inopportune directions? And frankly, that's one of the reasons that we thought that reorganizing to Alphabet would be a good idea. We thought that by appointing CEOs of our new bet companies, it would instill upon them a P&L level of responsibility that they may not have gotten at Google. And one of the things that we've seen as they've started to customize their approach is that they're being a lot more thoughtful about how they think about their people strategy, how they think about their comp strategy, and how they think about investing in capital expenditures and expansion. I want to tell you a little story. Going back a couple years, I was the head of global sales compensation at the time, and I got a frantic call at my desk. And my desk is a standing desk because I've read the research, and apparently sitting kills you. So I work at a standing desk, and I get a frantic call, and the call says, "Mark, you have to go to the CFO's office." And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what's going on? The CFO never calls me. Am I going to get fired? So I hop on a bike, I bike over to our CFO's office, I walk in the office, and our head of sales is sitting there, and our CFO is sitting there, and our CFO turns to us and he says, "Guys, what happened? We beat our Q4 sales forecast by $350 million. So the head of sales and I, we get a big goofy grin on our face. We're like, "This is fantastic, right? This is amazing." And our CFO is not smiling, and we're like, "Uh-oh, what's going on?" And our CFO says, "No, this isn't fantastic. My job as CFO is to think about budgets, to think about forecasting, and to do so in a very precise, forward-looking manner. And the fact that we have $350 million of unexpected surplus, this means that there's a data center in Northern Europe that didn't get built because I didn't know I'd have this money to spend." So when we think about our processes at Google, we think about how do we insert the right amount of tension into the process. And this is an example of where we have a head of sales whose job is only to beat quota as much as he or she can every single quarter, every single month, every single week. And we have a CFO that is hyper-focused on getting to the precise outcomes so that there's a high level of predictability into our future. And we think if you put these things together, it's the right amount of tension to put into your process so you have the good governance and checks and balances to run your businesses successfully. So at Google, we think it's important to own the culture. We think it's important to attract the right talent. We think you need to build for growth and scale. And we're only 18 years old as a company. What worked for us in a Palo Alto garage did not work for us when we IPO'd. When we IPO'd, that did not work for us last year when we reorganized to Alphabet. And as we think about attracting the right talent for our next billion users, we know that what is working for us today is not going to work for us in the future. We believe it's important to motivate for your top performers. We talk about attracting the right talent as the first pillar in your people strategy. Well, that only really works if you can attract and retain them. So you should have processes in place, whether it's performance management systems, whether it's talking to your senior leaders, but you need to know who your top performers are. You need to be comfortable that they're excited about their roles, and you need to be comfortable that they're going to stay. And this all comes together if you have a solid system of governance. These are the 4 key levers we use at Google to reward for success and motivation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. So we've got also a couple of questions for Mark. Google's culture is such a huge part of its employer brand equity or employer brand. How do you think other organizations can discover what makes their employer brand?
I think you need to think about empowering your people. I think you need to find ways to build the culture that resonates with the products that you build, the users that you're attracting, and thinking about not only what works for today, but what works for the future.
So, Mark, you spoke about how you tailored your reward system to the Middle East, and when you spoke about what you do here in Dubai, can you tell us what trends you see developing in terms of HR in the region and compensation systems or reward systems, as you like to call it, in the region in future?
I think it's a delicate balance, and I think for us at Google, we think about this from a matrix structure. At one level, we want our administrative functions to be as small as possible because we want to invest our resources in products, in salespeople, and in our users. And we don't want to invest it in overhead on people operations. So we're always having this debate on, should we be thinking about things globally consistently, or should we be thinking about things in a local customized manner? I think there's good arguments to be had for both, and I think you really need to think about what are the problems you're trying to solve, and where is it important to customize, and where is it important to be consistent.
Thank you so much, Mark. I would like